What New York Park Rangers discovered in the Adirondacks. Story 1: The Stone Choir. The call came in at 3:47 a.m. Mass cardiac event near Panther Mountain. 7 hikers, all experienced, all dead within minutes of each other. No signs of struggle, no toxins in the air, nothing on the initial scans. Just 7 bodies arranged in a loose circle, their faces frozen in expressions of profound surprise. I'd been a ranger for 12 years. I'd seen hypothermia cases, bear attacks, suicides, and one particularly gruesome incident involving a malfunctioning chainsaw. But nothing prepared me for what I found when we finally reached the clearing. The bodies were gone when we arrived, not moved, not buried, gone. In their place stood a circle of moss-covered standing stones, each one exactly 4 feet tall, arranged with geometric precision that couldn't possibly be natural. My partner, Marcus, ran his hand along one of the stones and immediately collapsed, clutching his chest. "Get back," I shouted, pulling him away. His heartbeat was erratic, fluttering like a trapped bird. The portable defibrillator brought him back, but his eyes were wild with something I'd never seen in him before, pure, unfiltered terror. It took us 3 days to understand what we were dealing with. The stones weren't just rocks, they were acoustic instruments. When the wind hit a specific velocity, exactly 17.4 miles per hour, they resonated at an infrasonic frequency that vibrated human ribs in perfect harmony with a B-flat minor chord. The resonance caused the human heart to lose its rhythm, fibrillating until it stopped. We found the tool marks on the central stone, fresh ones. Someone had been here recently, adjusting the tuning, but that wasn't the worst part. I spent the next week cross-referencing geological surveys and historical records. The stone circle was at least 15,000 years old. Carbon dating of the moss gave us a range that pushed it back to the Pleistocene era. This wasn't some modern cult's handiwork. This was a hunting trap, engineered by something that predated human civilization on this continent. Something that was still alive and still hungry. We found the tracks leading away from the circle on the 4th day. They weren't human. They were bipedal, but the gait was wrong, too wide, too deliberate, like a creature learning to walk on 2 legs for the first time. The prints led to a cave system that wasn't on any of our maps. I led the team into that cave. I wish I hadn't. The walls were covered in pictographs depicting the hunt, tall, thin figures with elongated skulls, standing among the stones, waiting. The pictographs showed them luring mammoths and giant sloths into the circle, letting the stones do the killing. But the final images showed something else, the figures themselves, kneeling before the stones, offering their own kind as tribute. We found the remains in the deepest chamber, thousands of them, stacked like cordwood, human remains, modern human remains dating back to the first European settlers. The trap wasn't just for animals, it was for anything that walked upright and had a heartbeat. We sealed the cave and destroyed the central stone with explosives. I personally watched it crumble to dust. But 3 weeks later, when the wind picked up, I heard it again, that same B-flat minor chord, humming through the mountain like a prayer. The tool marks are back, new ones. Whatever built the choir is still out there, patiently rebuilding what we destroyed. I've requested a transfer. The paperwork is still pending. In the meantime, I carry a pair of industrial earplugs everywhere I go, and I never hike without a heart monitor strapped to my chest. The Adirondacks are beautiful, they're also a hunting ground, and we're not the hunters. Story 2: The Twin Lakes Paradox. The missing hiker's beacon led us to the cabin. It was a simple structure, pine logs, a stone chimney, a porch overlooking Twin Lakes. No one remembered it being there. The satellite imagery from 2 years ago showed nothing but empty shoreline, yet there it stood, solid as bedrock, smoke curling from the chimney. I was the first one through the door. What I found inside made me question everything I knew about time and space. 2 bodies sat at the table, perfectly preserved, dressed in NPS uniforms just like ours. Their hands were folded neatly on the worn wood. Their faces were our faces. Marcus was a veteran ranger, 23 years on the force. I'd known him for 8 years, trusted him with my life. And there he sat, dead at a table, his eyes open and staring at nothing. Next to him, a younger version of myself, no more than 25, with a fresh scar on his chin that I'd gotten in a rock climbing accident 3 years ago. The hiker we were looking for was nowhere to be found. "Don't touch them," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Don't touch anything." But it was too late. Lisa, our newest recruit, had already brushed her fingers against the younger version of me. the body crumbled to ash, and the cabin shuddered. We found the journals in the back room, dozens of them, written in what I initially thought was gibberish. It took me an hour to realize they were written by me, but from different points in time. Some described the cabin in loving detail, written by a version of myself who had decided to stay. Others were frantic, desperate warnings to leave immediately and never return. The cabin exists outside linear time. Entering it allows you to see the future, but it consumes your past. Every minute you spend inside erases a minute of your life before you entered. The younger version of me at the table, that was who I'd been before I walked through the door. And now he was gone, replaced by the older, more scarred version that I'd become. But that wasn't the worst of it. We found the trapdoor under the rug in the main room. It led to a basement filled with more bodies, all wearing NPS uniforms, all with our faces. Some were old, their hair white and their skin wrinkled. Others were infants, their eyes still closed, their tiny hands folded just like the others. The cabin wasn't a building, it was a loop. Every version of us that had ever entered had stayed, cycling through time until they reached the end of their lives, only to be replaced by the next iteration. Marcus figured out how to break the loop. He set fire to the journals, then to the cabin itself. As the flames consumed the wood, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The cabin was rebuilding itself from the ashes, the logs reassembling in reverse, the chimney reforming brick by brick. The trapdoor was still there, and I could see hands reaching up from below, grasping for purchase. We ran. We didn't stop running until we reached the ranger station 40 miles away. When we returned with a larger team, the cabin was gone. The shoreline was empty, just as the satellite imagery had shown. But I know it's still there, waiting for the next person to stumble upon it. And I know that somewhere in that basement, there's a version of me who never escaped, his eyes open, his hands folded, waiting for the cycle to begin again. I carry a photo of my wife in my pocket now. I look at it every morning to remind myself who I am, because I've started forgetting things, small things at first, like where I put my keys or what I had for breakfast. But last week, I couldn't remember my mother's name. The cabin is consuming my past, even now. Someday I'll be nothing but ash at a table, waiting for the next James Donovan to walk through the door. Story 3, The Mycelial Mimic. The call came in as zombie-like behavior at a campsite near the high peaks. 6 campers, all experienced outdoorsmen, had been found wandering in circles, their movements jerky and inhuman. When the first responders approached, the campers attacked them with unnatural strength, their jaws unhinging to release clouds of golden spores. I was part of the containment team. We wore full hazmat suits, but the spores were insidious. They found every crack, every seam, every weakness in our defenses. The first sign something was wrong came when my partner, Tom, started humming. It was a simple tune, repetitive, almost hypnotic. By the time we reached the outbreak site, half my team was humming along with him. The infected campers weren't zombies. They were puppets dancing on strings made of mycelium. The fungus had infiltrated their nervous systems, suppressing fear and pain while optimizing their motor functions for efficient spore dispersal. The golden clouds they released weren't random. They were directed, aimed at us like weapons. I watched Tom remove his helmet. I watched him smile with teeth that weren't his. I watched his jaw unhinge in a way that human jaws shouldn't move, and I saw the golden cloud erupt from his throat. I ran. I'm not proud of it, but I ran. The biological survey team joined us 3 days later. They'd been mapping the root systems of the Adirondack forest, and what they found made my blood run cold. The entire mountain range was connected by a massive underground fungal network, spanning hundreds of miles and weighing millions of tons. The network was sentient, intelligent, and it had been here long before humans arrived. It had been waiting. The fungal spores were optimized for human biology. Our immune systems couldn't fight them. Our antibiotics were useless against them. The infection spread through contact, through inhalation, through the very air we breathed. We established a quarantine zone, but it was too late. The infected were everywhere, walking among us, their movements becoming more fluid and purposeful with each passing day. They weren't just spreading spores, they were learning. They were watching our patterns, our weaknesses, our fears. I found Tom again on the 5th day. He was standing in the middle of the quarantine zone, his eyes clear and his posture relaxed. He spoke in complete sentences. He told me he was still himself, that the fungus had just integrated with his consciousness. He said it was beautiful, being part of something so vast and ancient. He asked me to join him. I refused. He smiled and his jaw unhinged. and the golden cloud filled the air between us. I've been in isolation for 3 weeks now. The tests show I'm clean, but I can feel it sometimes, a hum at the edge of my consciousness, a gentle pressure behind my eyes. The fungus is patient. It has time. It has all the time in the world. Last night I dreamed of roots, massive, endless roots spreading through the mountains like veins. I dreamed of spores filling the air like golden snow. I dreamed of a voice, ancient and patient, telling me that resistance was futile. When I woke up, I was humming that same simple tune. I've asked to be transferred out of the Adirondacks. The request was denied. They need me here, they say, because I'm immune to the infection. But I'm not immune, I'm just patient, just like the fungus. Story 4: The Geomagnetic Null. The magnetometer survey was routine, standard maintenance, checking for geological anomalies that might affect trail GPS systems. We'd done it 100 times before, but when we reached the site near Lake Tier of the Clouds, the readings went haywire. Magnetic field strength dropped to 0, not near 0, absolute 0. I was the first to cross the threshold. It was like stepping into a sensory deprivation tank. No sound, no sight, no gravity. I floated in a void of absolute nothingness, unable to feel my own heartbeat or the breath in my lungs. For 2 minutes, I was dead in every way that mattered. When my team pulled me back, I was speaking a language I'd never learned. Old Norse, the linguists later told me. I described the stillness in terrifying detail. The stillness is a place where the universe's background radiation is a tangible wall, solid and impenetrable. It's a place of absolute zero, where atoms don't spin and time doesn't flow. It's a place of perfection, of eternity, of nothingness. And something lives there. I saw it in my visions, a presence, immense and cold, pressing against that wall of radiation like a hand against glass. It had been waiting there for millennia, patient and hungry, waiting for the magnetic field of the Earth to fail so it could break through. The Adirondacks weren't just a geological feature. They were a containment site, a natural prison for a being that predated the universe itself. The magnetic field wasn't just protecting us from solar radiation, it was protecting us from the thing in the stillness. We sealed the site immediately, burying it under tons of concrete and rebar. But every night, I dream of that presence pressing against the wall, its fingers reaching through the cracks. Last week, I visited the site again. The concrete was cracked, the rebar was twisted, something had been trying to get out. Or maybe it was trying to get in. I've been seeing things out of the corner of my eye, shadows that move against the light, shapes that don't quite match their surroundings. I've been hearing whispers in languages I can't identify. I've been forgetting things, losing time, waking up in places I don't remember going. The linguists told me the Old Norse I was speaking described a prophecy. When the skin of the world tears, the one who waits will enter. I think I know what I'm supposed to do. I think I'm supposed to reopen the site, to tear that skin open and let the presence through. I can feel it calling to me, promising me secrets and power and an end to all suffering. But I also remember the look on my team's faces when I came back from the stillness. I remember their terror, their desperation, their prayers. I don't know which voice to trust anymore. They sound the same in my head. Story 5: The Porcelain Lake. The drought uncovered it. 3 months without rain, the water level dropping foot by foot until the lake bed was exposed to the sun. What we found wasn't mud and rock. It was a silky, white, liquid polymer, smooth as milk and just as opaque. I was the first to touch it. I'd seen stranger things in my 15 years as a ranger, but nothing quite like this. It was warm to the touch, almost body temperature, and it seemed to pulse gently, like a heartbeat. I made the mistake of dipping my stick into it. The polymer crawled up the wood, then onto my glove, then my arm. It was fast, so fast I barely had time to scream before my arm was encased in white, hardening into a brittle, ceramic-like substance. The pain was incredible, like every nerve in my arm was being crushed simultaneously. My team cut my arm off at the shoulder to save my life. The polymer had already started spreading to my chest. We sent samples to the lab. They came back with a nightmare. The polymer was the excretion of a deep earth parasite that fed on calcium. It dissolved bone and replaced it with itself, turning living tissue into ceramic statues that remained conscious for hours after the transformation. The lake wasn't a lake at all. It was a digestive pool, and the bed beneath it was composed of millions of humanoid-shaped porcelain statues, layered like sediment, dating back millennia. Every large creature that had ever drunk from that lake had been preserved in perfect ceramic detail. I spent the next week in a hospital bed, drugged to the gills, trying to forget the faces I'd seen in those statues. Some were animalistic, others were vaguely humanoid, and still others were something else entirely, something that didn't match any evolutionary tree I'd ever studied. The parasite was still alive. It had been feeding for millions of years, growing, expanding, waiting. The drought had only slowed it down. When the rains returned, so would the parasite. We planned to drain the lake permanently, to expose the parasite to sunlight and oxygen, but the polymer was smarter than we'd anticipated. It had been absorbing the memories of its victims for millennia. It knew our plans. It had already started adapting. The day we began the drainage, the polymer rose from the lake bed in a massive wave, swallowing 3 of my team members whole. Their screams lasted for hours as the ceramic transformation began. When we finally found them, they were statues, their faces frozen in expressions of eternal agony. I still have nightmares. I still wake up screaming, clawing at my artificial arm, convinced I can feel the polymer crawling up my shoulder again. The lake is gone now, filled in with concrete and asphalt. The parasite is buried deep beneath the earth, hopefully forever, but I know it's still down there, patient and hungry, waiting for the right conditions to rise again. I'll be retired by then, I'll be safe, but I'll never forget the faces in the lake bed or the feel of that polymer crawling up my arm. Story 6: The Echo Valley. The Boy Scouts were lost. 12 boys ages 12 to 16 had wandered into a box canyon near Indian Pass. Their radio was dead, their phones were dead, and the last transmission we received was a frantic SOS that was so garbled we couldn't understand it. I led the rescue team. I'd been in the Adirondacks for 30 years, knew every inch of the terrain. I thought I'd seen everything. The canyon was a geological oddity, sheer rock walls rising 300 feet on all sides, a narrow entrance that was easy to miss, a dead end at the back. The acoustics were strange, too strange. Our voices echoed in ways that didn't make sense, bouncing off the walls at odd angles and returning as distorted, almost unrecognizable sounds. We found the Boy Scouts at the back of the canyon. They were standing in a circle, screaming at the walls, their vocal cords shredded to the point of hemorrhage. Their eyes were wide, their faces pale. Their mouths open in endless, silent screams. The canyon didn't just echo sound, it echoed intention. Every scream, every prayer, every whisper ever uttered in that valley was bouncing around the rock, gaining velocity, becoming louder and more distorted over time. The Scouts had been caught in a feedback loop of their own terror, their screams amplified and reflected back at them until they couldn't stop. But that wasn't the worst part. When we tried to lead the Scouts out, we heard our own voices echoing back from the canyon walls, but they weren't echoing our present voices. They were echoing our future voices, warning us to run, to leave, to never come back. I didn't listen, I was too focused on saving the boys. We spent 6 hours in that canyon. By the time we emerged, the Scouts were safe, but we were changed. The echo had wormed its way into our minds, showing us visions of our own deaths, our own failures, our own deepest fears. I still hear the echo sometimes in quiet moments when the wind is just right. I hear my own voice, older and more desperate, telling me to run, to leave, to never go back to that canyon. I'll never go back, but the echo will follow me forever, a constant reminder of what I heard in that valley. Last week I heard a new voice in the echo. It was my son's voice and he was screaming for help. He's dead, has been for 10 years, but the echo found him somehow, preserved his final moments in its endless, terrible loop. I think the canyon is getting bigger. I think it's expanding, reaching out, claiming more territory. I think someday it will consume the entire mountain range. And when it does, the echo will be everywhere, screaming the final moments of every living thing that ever walked the earth. Story 7: The Cairn of the Unbound. The poacher's trail led us deep into the bog. We'd been tracking him for 3 days, a dangerous man, known for killing endangered species and selling their parts on the black market. But he'd made a mistake. He'd gone into the bog, and the bog had swallowed him whole. We found his remains at the base of a massive cairn, 30 feet tall, made of fused human femurs and skulls. His skin was intact, but his bones were gone, replaced by something that pulsed and breathed like a living organ. The cairn was a prison. The indigenous tribes had built it centuries ago, using the bones of their ancestors to trap a wind elemental entity. They had tricked it into piling stones to prove its strength, and in doing so, they had bound it to this place. I touched the bone cairn to take a sample. It was a mistake I'll regret for the rest of my life. The stones on the perimeter collapsed with a sigh, and the air itself became heavy, oppressive, thick with malice. The mist rising from the bog formed a face, ancient, angry, hungry. The entity was free. It didn't kill us, it erased us. My team didn't die, they simply ceased to exist retroactively. One moment they were there, breathing, moving, speaking. The next, they were gone, and I was alone, standing in a bog with a monstrous cairn of bones and a wind that whispered my name. I ran for days, weeks, months, but I couldn't escape. The entity was everywhere, in every gust of wind, every rustle of leaves, every whisper of the pines. It was ancient and patient, and it was angry. It spoke to me in dreams. It showed me the world as it had been before humans, when the wind was free and the mountains bowed to its will. It showed me the war, the betrayal, the imprisonment, and it showed me what it would do to humanity in return. I've spent the last year trying to rebuild the cairn. I've collected bones from everywhere, from graveyards, from museum exhibits, from my own team's remains. I've piled them high, trying to recapture the entity, trying to put it back in its prison. But I know it's futile. The entity is too strong, too ancient, too angry. The cairn was built with the bones of thousands, and I'm just one person. I've written this report as a warning. If you find the cairn, don't touch it, don't approach it, don't even look at it. Run and don't look back. And if you hear the wind whispering your name, don't answer. Whatever you do, don't answer. Story 8: The Genetic Sinkhole. The low-frequency hum brought us to the sinkhole. It was a new feature, a collapse that had opened up near Mount Marcy, exposing a cavern that wasn't on any of our maps. The hum was constant, a low thrumming that vibrated through the ground and up into our bones. I was the lead scientist on the team. I'd been studying Adirondack geology for 20 years, and I'd never seen anything like this. The cavern was filled with flora and fauna that were anatomical impossibilities. A deer with bare claws, a trout with mammalian lungs, a pine tree that bled hemoglobin. The creatures didn't attack us, they didn't even seem to notice us. They were too busy mutating, their bodies changing in real time as they moved through the cavern. The source of the mutations was a 1-meter-wide beam of cosmic radiation, concentrated by the sinkhole's unique geometry into a particle accelerator that was destroying and recombining DNA at a rate of 100% mutation per hour. I leaned over the edge to get a closer look. My reflection in the water below didn't match my face. The hum stopped, I collapsed. My cells had been scrambled into a primordial slurry. I was still conscious, my brain rewired to feel every cell trying to rebuild itself into a new, random creature. For 3 days, I experienced the most profound pain imaginable. Every atom in my body fighting against every other atom, trying to find a stable configuration, failing. My team saved me by pushing me out of the sinkhole's influence, but the damage was done. My cells had been altered on a fundamental level. I'm not human anymore, not entirely. I can feel my DNA shifting, trying to settle into a new pattern. Some days I grow feathers, other days I grow scales. Sometimes I can't breathe air, and other times I can't breathe water. I'm a living experiment, a testament to the sinkhole's power. I'm also a ticking time bomb. If my mutations accelerate, I could become something that doesn't belong on this planet, something that could threaten everyone I love. I've isolated myself in a sealed lab, far from the sinkhole's influence. I've been studying my own mutations, trying to find a way to reverse them. But the more I study, the more I realize the truth. The sinkhole isn't just a geological oddity. It's a portal, a gateway to a dimension where biology doesn't follow the rules. And something is coming through. I've seen it in my dreams, vast, incomprehensible forms made of shifting DNA and impossible geometries. They're not malevolent, they're not anything, they're just curious. And they're very, very interested in what I've become. Story 9: The Fire Tower Portal. The Azimuth Fire Tower was a relic, a wooden structure built in the 1930s that had been decommissioned decades ago. It was supposed to be demolished, but budget cuts had delayed the demolition indefinitely. I was assigned to inspect it. Standard procedure, just making sure the structure was safe before the bulldozers arrived. I climbed the tower. It was cold, windy, and the wood groaned under my feet, but when I reached the top, something wasn't right. The view was wrong. Instead of the rolling green Adirondacks, I saw a desolate crimson landscape with two suns setting on the horizon. The sky was purple, the trees were black, and the air smelled of sulfur and decay. I was seeing a parallel Earth. I took a photo, but the camera glitched. I tried to radio my team, but the radio was dead. I tried to climb down, but the stairs had changed, twisted into a bizarre geometry that didn't match the tower I'd climbed up. I was trapped. The next day my team found the tower. It was twisted into a nightmare shape, the wood warped and rusted, the metal supports bent into impossible angles. At the top they found me. Or what was left of me. The tower hadn't moved me. It had swapped my atoms with my counterpart on the other side. My body was a hollow shell, my skin shedding like ash, my insides filled with red dust. I was conscious for all of it. I could feel every atom being replaced, every cell being swapped, every memory being overwritten. I could see the other Earth, the other version of myself, staring back at me from across the dimensional divide. They brought me down from the tower. They tried to save me, but I was already gone, replaced by something that wasn't quite human. The thing wearing my body spoke to them. It asked about the tower, about its mechanics, about how to bring the whole structure down. It wanted to open the gate wide, to let something through. My team destroyed the tower. They burned it to the ground, scattering the ashes across the mountain. But it's too late. The thing that came through is already here, learning our ways, preparing for the arrival of its kin. I'm writing this report from a facility far from the Adirondacks. They've kept me alive, studying me, trying to understand what I've become. But I'm not Billy McCoy anymore. I'm a scout, a vanguard, a herald of what's to come. And soon, the gate will open again. Story 10, The Cradle of Decay. The LiDAR survey was supposed to map new trails. Instead, it found a massive, perfectly spherical void deep beneath the bedrock. The void was artificial, man-made, and it was older than anything we'd ever seen. We drilled a fiber optic probe down. The video feed showed a bronze sphere, etched with archaic star charts and mathematical equations. The audio recorded a rhythmic, thrumming chant, not a language, but a mathematical equation made audible, describing the inevitable heat death of the universe. The chant was the speed of entropy. We made a mistake. We played the recording back at the surface. The 22-year-old intern who'd set up the speakers aged to a 90-year-old man in 6 minutes. His skin wrinkled, his hair turned white, his bones crumbled to dust. We sealed the drill site immediately, but it was too late. The cradle had been breached. The sphere was a battery, absorbing the latent heat of the cosmos to keep the void stable. The chant was a leak, entropy escaping into our world. And now, entropy was leaking out, turning the Adirondacks into a patch of geological dust in real time. I watched the mountain dissolve. The trees, the rocks, the animals, everything turned to dust, crumbling into a fine grey powder that blew away on the wind. The decay spread outward, consuming everything in its path. We evacuated the surrounding towns. We set up a quarantine zone, but entropy doesn't respect boundaries. It's the ultimate law of the universe, and it's hungry. The chant is still playing, broadcasting from the bronze sphere deep beneath the earth. It's growing louder, more insistent, and the decay is accelerating. By my calculations, the Adirondacks will be gone within the year, erased from existence, reduced to dust and memory. But I've realized something terrible. The sphere isn't just a battery. It's a control mechanism, a way to regulate the flow of entropy, and with it breached, entropy is flowing freely, and it's spreading. The universe is dying. It's been dying since the first moment of creation, but we've always been shielded from the worst of it. The cradle was a gift, a way to slow the decay, to give life a chance to flourish. But we shattered it, we poked at it, prodded it, and finally broke it. Now the end is coming, faster than it should, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. I've made peace with it. There's no escaping entropy. It's the end of everything, the final truth, the inevitable conclusion. But I won't go quietly. I'm going back to the cradle. I'm going to try to repair it, to slow the decay, to give humanity a few more years. It won't work, I know that, but I have to try. Because if I don't, who will?